Bottles. We use them all the time, in everyday circumstances, wherever they may be needed, from school to work to the gym. They come in all different colours, sizes and shapes, and there's different plastics to make each drink taste better. But most, if not all, are only used once. In these days, bottles are everywhere, which creates an alarming dilemma. Where do they all go? What happens if you chuck it in that bin? What happens if you don't chuck it in that bin? Not many people consider this when throwing out a bottle, but it is becoming more prominent in the public eye. This is because of the lack of thought in previous years of how to get rid of it all has finally caught up with us. This also doesn't include all the rubbish that's discarded and thrown away in the streets and the woods. This is an arising problem that affects both rural countryside areas and built-up towns and cities. Pollution is one of the leading issues in today's society, and it's slowly affecting us now and will affect us for generations to come. In order for us to understand the amount of pollution a bottle causes, it would help if we began where it all started for the life of a bottle, here. At a bottling plant where all PET bottles, the most standard type of bottle, is created and shipped out to the country. Everything from melting, moulding, bottling and shipment all happen here. Many major companies can contact these bottling companies and ask them to be responsible for the shipment of their product. But what does happen inside when creating a bottle? What will happen to that bottle at the end of its use? Let's find out. First things first though, we need to get the plastic. Now this can be done in a number of different ways, but the most common is by the use of oil fracking. The main process for acquiring the oil from the ground is by digging using these oil pumps. After the plastic is extracted from the oil, it's sent here to the bottle production plant. The plastics are made into small pellets that will be melted down and moulded into a bottle. The pellets are sorted first to make sure nothing but plastic is getting into the mould. The plastic is then sent to a moulding line where it's heated up rapidly and made into the shape of a bottle by the use of blowing. This involves the plastic being blown into the mould, then rapidly cooled to make the shape of the bottle. After the bottles have been created, they are sent away to a processing plant to be used to ship the drinks out. The processing plant buys the bottles, then fills them with the drinks. To do this, they must first process the bottle to make sure it's up to the standard that they've set out. The bottles are moved throughout the plant, going through different stages, but are eventually filled up with whatever liquids need to be shipped out. Water, soda, anything like that. Corner shops, supermarkets, cafes and restaurants, bottles are sent everywhere to be used. This is where we come in and the purpose of the bottle comes to light. It then comes down to this small but greatly increasing problem, one that many people now should consider when using a bottle. Where do all the bottles go? Bottles are used every day without thinking how they're meant to be taken care of. Many people just use a bottle, then dispose of it in one of the many nearby bins. But many of these bins aren't sorted through like recycling bins, so different types of rubbish in public bins are pushed together. So that means it's harder to differentiate what is recyclable, like bottles, cans and paper, and what's not, like cigarettes, fast food packaging and polystyrene. This makes it harder to recycle bottles, so eventually it all ends up here. Landfills, the place where every piece of trash goes that is not recycled. Landfills have taken over mass pieces of land just for trash, which means it's already bad in itself. But the mass amount of recyclable bottles that are dumped here is way too much for the already massive amount it receives. And this is only the start of the concerns. The main concern we have to think about with bottles from landfills is that they take years to degrade. A single PET bottle could take up to 50 years to fully degrade. This single bottle will be here for 50 years. 50 years for something we only use for 5 to 10 minutes. This is a rising problem that we must combat simply by putting the bottle in a different bin, or even better, recycling it in a more creative way. But to hopefully help you understand why bottles take so long to degrade, I've enlisted the help of a scientist friend to tell you more.
Oh! I didn't see you there. So, you're here to learn about bottles. Well then, let's begin. So, Why does this take so long to degrade? It's a simple bottle made of simple plastics, so why doesn't it just merge with something else or disappear? It's all part of the chemical compound used to form this thing together. That was what creates the problem. PET plastics are made of hundreds of tiny elements that form together to create a monomer. These include hydrogen, oxygen, carbon. This process is repeated multiple times up until we can create a polymer, a large combination of monomers. That is when the plastic becomes hard plastic and the production of the bottle can take place. And now to explain why these bottles take so long to degrade. It's because of the combination that we make with these elements. Because of the fact that they're man-made, the tiny enzymes that would normally degrade these things and tear them apart don't recognize them, and thus the degrading process takes so much longer. And this is why it can take up to 50 years, and depending on the type of bottle, 1,000 years just for them to degrade, all because of the combination between the different elements. So, instead of contributing to the everywhere problem by throwing them away to some landfill or some dump somewhere, you could maybe get a little bit creative, recycle them, or you could repurpose them into such things as
a potted plant, a watering can,
a bird feeder.
There's tons to do with bottles that anyone can do to help reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfills. With all these bottles being reused, we will eventually come to the point where there are far fewer bottles to be sent to the landfills. But if this is not your thing, just remember to throw out your bottles in the correct bins. Every tiny bit helps us in the future. Thanks for watching.